What's going on, guys? It's Anton here. So today we're gonna go ahead and build out a Pokemon Discord bot, and pretty much all it does is it's gonna fetch Poke data. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create new application, Pokebot, create, and we're just gonna go ahead and authorize our bot real quick. Add a bot to our application. Okay, authorize our bot. We're gonna add it to test. Then we're gonna go ahead and select the amount of robots. So our bot's on our server right now. We just need to log the bot in. You can see Pokebot is over here. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my terminal. Create Pokebot.js. Open up Visual Studio Code. And we're just going to go through the simple basics of initializing our repository with npm. And so we can now install Discord.js. Oh, it's npm install Discord.js. We're going to install .env. Alright, so we're going to go and just create a source folder, create the bot.js file. So, I'll also need to install something called node fetch. This is going to be used for fetching data from the API, which is very important. So let's just go ahead and get our bot to log in real quick. So we're just going to do the basics, no command handler. So I'm importing the client class from the Discord.js module. Okay, that's what this curly brace is doing. It's basically destructuring the class itself from the module. Okay, so we don't import the entire module, we're just importing the client class itself, and then we're going to go and create a new instance of that client, and then we're going to just log the bot in, and we're going to reference the bot_token environment variable, and we're going to have to create a .env file in the root of our directory. So as you can see, the .env file is outside the source folder, and it's in the root of our Pokebot.js folder. And we're going to create an environment variable, paste our token in. There we go. Okay, cool. So now that our bot should have no problem logging in, I'm going to go ahead and set up a couple of scripts so we can run our source code. So I'm going to use a dev script. We're going to use nodemon. It's going to point to source.js and start script. If we want to deploy to Heroku, for example, you would need this. All right, that's good enough. So now if I do npm run dev, the bot is gonna run in dev mode, but I think there's an issue. This is invalid token, and that's because we did not require .env. We have to call the config function. This way it loads our environment variable. Now it's gonna log our bot in. You can see Pokebot is logged in. Okay, great. So we have everything that we need. Next thing that we're gonna need to do is we're gonna just need to set up a command for our bot, so that way our bot can actually listen to that command. It can take in data like the Pokemon that we want to get data for. And yeah, so let's just first just log this to the console so we know when our bot has logged in. We're going to register an event listener to the message event. The message event is going to have a callback function with one parameter, which is the message object. And we want to make sure that we're checking to see if the message is sent from a bot. So if it is, we're going to return. So this pretty much ignores all bot messages. And from here on, we're going to set up a command. Alright guys, so now that we have our bot set up, we're going to actually take a look at the PokeAPI now. So for those who don't know what an API is, I know you guys have probably heard the term a lot, but an API, well, first of all, it stands for Application Programming Interface, and what that means is typically when you have large applications such as Facebook, Uber, Lyft, Instagram. Sometimes those large applications may want to expose some kind of interface so that other developers can use that interface to interact with their program, like their application, and integrate it with their new application that they're developing. So you probably have actually used APIs a lot, you just have not realized it, but all APIs is just written code by someone else. They expose an interface so that other developers can develop applications that can talk with one another. Okay, for example, the Discord.js library, it itself is technically written code by the developers that interact with the Discord API itself, right? The Discord.js library is not the Discord API itself, but the Discord.js library provides a bunch of methods, a bunch of functions that allow us to talk with another application, which is pretty much the Discord API, which is where we're getting all of our data about, Discord guilds, messages, users, etc. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. So in this case, we're going to be using the PokeAPI, again, which the API itself is an application that is hosted on some web server. Okay, we're going to talk to that API and we're going to ask for the information that we want. Okay, and in this case, what we're going to be asking for is just Poke data, right? For example, you can actually go to their website and you can look at, the try it now. Over here, you can just type in whatever Pokemon you want. So if you want to type in Bulbasaur, it's going to give you information about Bulbasaur, and it's going to give you sprites, stats, all kind of stuff. Okay, and you can also pass in the Pokemon's IDs. I think one is Bulbasaur, two is Ivysaur. And I think 150 is what? Mewtwo. 151 should be Mew. 152 should be the Chikorita. There we go. Alright, so we can just play around with this. Okay, but in order to actually get the data from this API, we're going to need to make an HTTP GET request. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit more. But for now, let's just go ahead and go back to our code. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and set up our if message.content .to lowercase that starts with. We're basically going to check to see if the user passed in the correct command, because the way our command should work is we're going to have Pokemon, the exclamation mark Pokemon, and we're going to do the name of the Pokemon. So for example, it has to be something like Pidgey or Bulbasaur or Venusaur, etc. Okay, and it's always going to be one argument because we only want the command to make one request to the PokeAPI. So what we're going to do is we're going to just parse the, let me actually use constant set. We're going to do const Pokemon equals, so we're going to take message.content.to lowercase, or actually we don't even care about case. We can do content splits, and we can just split it by a string. You can actually use a regular expression if you want, but we're going to just use a space for now. Okay, and over here, what I'm doing is I'm referencing the first position of this array, because remember, dot split is going to return an array, and the name of the Pokemon is what we care about. We don't care about the command or anything after or before. We care about the first Pokemon that they specify. Okay, so at position 1, which is always going to be the name of the Pokemon that we're expecting, is going to be Pidgey. Okay, so we're assigning it to this Pokemon variable over here. Okay, so now we're going to actually have to make the HTTP GET request. So I'm actually going to create a new file, and I'm just going to call this, we can call this utils. It's good to keep your code separate from everything else. We're just going to do Pokemon.js. And what we're going to do is we're going to do const fetch. So we're going to go ahead and require the node fetch module that we had installed earlier. And this module is pretty much similar to the fetch API from the browser that you can use, but it's just for this one's for Node. So we're going to create a function, or we're going to create an async function, and we're going to attach it to the module.exports object. So async function get Pokemon. Okay, it's going to be an asynchronous function because what we're going to do is we're going to actually fetch the HTTP request. Whoops. We're going to make an HTTP request to the PokeAPI server. So we're going to need this URL. Const base URL equals this. And this function get Pokemon is going to take in a Pokemon. And this parameter can actually be either the name of the Pokemon or the Pokemon's ID. Okay, and since we're only going to fetch Pokemon and not things like berries or items. We're just gonna make this endpoint v2/Pokemon. Okay, so we're gonna now say let's response equals. So we're gonna have to use this function over here. So we're gonna say fetch, and I'm gonna use template syntax. So that's backticks $, and I'm going to get the base URL /poke $, curly braces Pokemon. So this is going to end up resolving it to the URL that we want. So it's going to be https://pokeapi.co/API/v2/Pokemon, and whatever Pokemon that we pass in, it's going to resolve it to the URL that we want. That's the nice thing about template syntax inside the backticks. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So we have to await this method call or function call because fetch itself returns a promise. And we're going to have to do one more thing because this method itself returns it resolves the response, okay? And we actually need the JSON data. So we're going to go ahead and just do return await response.json. Okay, so now if we go into bot.js, we're going to have to import this function over here. We can just actually import the entire Pokemon.js file. So, but actually, since I might actually want to get different data later on, such as berries or evolutions, I'm gonna actually do this instead. We're gonna do async function, and I think what I want to do get Pokemon. Okay, there we go. I don't want to import this entire. I don't want to export this entire file as just as a function itself. I want to export it with multiple functions. That's why I'm doing this. Okay, so now if I do const, if I do require /util/Pokemon, you're gonna see that I can actually import just this function itself. If I left it the way it was, we would have had to do get Pokemon, and that itself would have been a function. But later on, I'm going to add more functions that are going to get different data. But for now, we're going to just do Pokemon. Okay, so over here, I have my callback function is an asynchronous callback function. Remember, just make sure you add the async keyword. Okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to call this method or this function, and this function is going to return a promise, which is going to give us the data that we want. So we're going to do const PokeData equals await get Pokemon. We're going to pass in the Pokemon that the user specified for the argument. And now if I do a const log, you're going to see that hopefully everything is good. There we go. We have our data. So that is a simple example on how you can make an HTTP GET request to a server. Okay, this is just a simple, very easy HTTP GET request. You can see we have all of the data that we need. Okay, and you can choose which data you want to display on the Discord channel. For now, I think what I'll do is I'll focus on just some simple things. So let's do this. Let's do const sprites stats wait name equals PokeData. So this is going to destructure the entire PokeData object to give us the value stored inside each corresponding variable name that matches the object's property. So for example, if you look over here, sprites is going to end up getting assigned to this variable over here. Stats is going to be assigned to stats, wait to wait, and then name to name. And whatever other data that we need, we don't really care so much about moves because there are too many of them, so we're not going to worry about it. ID, actually, yeah, let's get the ID as well. Okay, and height 3 forms. Okay, so one thing to note that I think the height and weight are actually in a different format. I'm not too entirely sure, but we'd have to do some conversion. So, and I think maybe base experience would be good too. So let's get that. So base experience. Okay. All right. So we're gonna just create a message embed. and we're just going to send all this data to the channel. So before we do anything else, though, we actually do have to do a couple of things. So we know that sprites is actually an array, and I want the front default, so that's going to be this URL. That's going to be the thumbnail. So what we're going to do is first let's do const embed equals new message embed, and I'll do embed embed dot set thumbnail, and we're going to pass in sprites, and this is an array, I think, right? It's actually an object, so we're gonna do sprites dot front default, since that is the name of the property. So we're gonna do sprites dot front default. So that should set the thumbnail. So that should be good for sprites. We don't need anything else from the sprites object. We are gonna need stats. So actually, if we look, let me actually check the API real quick. Let's do Bulbasaur. And we can actually look at some of these stats as well over here. So the stats is actually an array of objects, and these objects give you the base stats, and it gives you the effort value, I think. And let's see, the stat itself. Okay, so base stat value, the name, which is speed, and you can just, there's another URL for that. We're not gonna worry about that. So for speed, the base is 45 for Bulbasaur, and the effort is 0. So we're gonna do stats for each. Okay, and basically stats itself is an array, and inside this array you can kind of like look at over here. It's an array. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit. So stats is an array, and it's gonna have 6 items, and it's going to have speed, special defense, it's gonna have special attack, it's going to have defense, and it's going to have attack and HP. Okay, so we're going to have to iterate through this stats array, and we're going to have to modify this embed. So what we're going to do is we're going to do, let's see, for each stat, we're going to do embed.add field. So the add field method takes in 2 properties. Well, it can take in a third one, which is inline, but we're not going to worry about that. The first property is going to be name, so we're going to need the name of the stat. So to get the name of the stat, we're going to have to do stat.stat.name. Okay, because stat itself is an object, and that object has a property called stat, and that object itself has a property called name. And we're going to get the actual base stat. We don't really care so much about the effort. I mean, you can add that if you want, but we're going to only worry about base stat for now. So now the stat object itself has the base stats property. Let me just add that there. There we go. So this is going to add 6 fields. Okay, so we can honestly just actually omit these curly braces. There we go. Okay, so that should add those embeds, those fields to the embed. Now for weights, we can just simply do, you can either add this, you can add this to a field as well. You can do embed dot field, you do weight, and of course, name is the most important one. I think I'll save that for the title, but we can always just modify it too. I don't really know what this looks like right now, but we'll do name, and then ID. And base experience, we can probably do that last. So we'll do embed add field, base experience, and then we're gonna do base experience. Okay, so let's actually just send this message to the channel to see what it looks like, and we can modify it later on if we don't like it. Okay, great. Okay, our bot hasn't started up yet. Let's just wait a little bit. Okay. There we go. You can see that we have the thumbnail. And this kind of looks a little bit ugly. So let me actually zoom in a little bit. Okay, yeah, this looks a little bit ugly. So let me actually add the inline true. So that way it stays on the same line. If there's enough space, and there clearly is enough space. So let's just have our bot restart. There we go. Okay. And this looks a little bit better. So we have our speed, special attacks, special defense, defense, attack, HP, weight, base experience, and we have the thumbnail, and you can see Pidgey number 16. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And of course, we can add more stuff too. Again, just look at the API and you can see all of the data that you want to get. Okay, so for example, we can look at the abilities. So if we want to get abilities, we can do the same thing. So let me actually make this a little bit more cleaner. Okay. And let's do abilities as well. And we might want to get the, let's see, species. We can get sprites. Types. Oh, types. Did I forget types? I did. Okay, let's do that real quick. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. So let's see. Oh, and also keep in mind that for fields, you can only have a max of 25. Okay, so right now we've used up about 8. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so if you have a lot of, if you want to get a lot of data, you might want to use descriptions instead of fields, or you can use both, but just be very careful, okay? So let's go ahead and do stats, or not stats, types, for each. We're going to type, and we're going to do the same thing. We're basically going to take the embed, and we're going to add a bunch of fields dynamically. So in this case, it's only going to use at most, I mean, I'm pretty sure Pokemon don't have more than 2 types, so yeah, it should be fine. So we're going to do types, and let's see, and we can look at the slot too, and you can see that the slot itself is actually 2 and then 1. So we're going to do type.type.name. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, embed.add field, type.type.name. Whoops. We're going to do, and then, let's see. Wait a minute. Poison grass. Okay, sorry. It's gonna actually be this. We're gonna have type, and then type the name. Okay, there we go. And of course, if we set the inline to true, okay, that's gonna stay on the same line. So for Pidgey, there we go. We see type, flying, normal. Okay, and yeah, like I said, you can play around with it to make it look appropriate for your own needs. You can see type, flying, normal. Okay, so yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.